6:30 p.m. on May 18th, calling to order the Newmarket Budget Committee. All please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll do a quick roll call. Carl Blackstone here. Chris Blackstone.
Here.
Paul Devon. Here. Tony Weinstein.
Here.
Al Zink. Absent. Lauren Caldwell.
Present.
Nicholas Perrin. Katana Conley.
Present.
Jeff Boyd.
Present.
Alfred Miola. Absent. Brian Riley, of course, here. So it is 6:31. We'll open to the public. And seeing no members of the public, we will close at 6:31. So today, business is going through to elect new officers for the Budget Committee, and Steve will walk through an overview of the Budget Committee. We'll get the town quarterly update, the schools quarterly update, and then we'll kind of talk through our draft schedule. I realize I haven't introduced myself. Brian Rowley, I'm the budget chair, so pleasure to meet you, and thank you all for joining the committee this year. And Steve, Brian, Todd, and as you come up, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourselves, that'd be great. So, first order of business, that is electing new officers. Chris.
Sure, and in the interest of time, I would think it's interesting if we could go ahead and say we have a chair and vice chair, correct? Somebody else has Thanksgiving minutes.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
So in the interest of time, I would say I would like to move that I would nominate chair and vice chair, Brian and Carl to stay in place as chair and vice chair.
I'll second that.
He cannot. The council member and the school board member can't vote on the chair and the vice chair.
I retract my second.
Seconded by Tony Weinstein. Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, unanimous approval.
Abstain.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Steve, keeping us honest up here. Okay, so then the next step is the overview committee from Steve.
Good evening. My name is Steve Fournier. I'm the town manager. Usually you actually will have Bill Tappan, who is the Director of Finance and Administration, here to go over the figures with you on the quarterly basis. He's on vacation, so you get me tonight. Tonight I'm just going to go over sort of like what's the role of the Municipal Budget Committee. Newmarket's unique in our form of government, so there's some differences compared to other municipal budget committees around the state. First, what is the Municipal Budget Committee? It's an independent elected body established under RSA Chapter 32. RSAs, for those who don't know, are state laws, acting on behalf of the Newmarket's voters to review the town's proposed budget and deliver a recommended budget to town meeting. The key point of this is that on the ballot is the Budget Committee's budget, not the town council, that is the official recommended budget presented to the voters. So every year when you see the recommended budget, it usually states recommended by the Budget Committee, and then if it's different from the town council, have their number on there. But it's ultimately the Budget Committee's budget that goes on the ballot. The budget process starts with myself as the town manager. I propose a budget to town council. What I do is I get all the estimates from the department heads. I review it with the department heads and make necessary changes, either up or down, and then forward one budget document to town council, who I must get my budget in by October 15th by charter. The town council then reviews the budget and proposes one to the budget committee. They have to do that by the November 15th. If they do not, my budget goes to the budget committee. Then the budget committee reviews and adjusts and makes recommendations, and ultimately that's the one that will be going on to the ballot. And so how is Newmarket different? So Newmarket operates under the town council, town manager form of government. In 1991, we adopted RSA Chapter 49D. We do not have what you may know of as a select board in town meeting. Out of 234 municipalities in the state of New Hampshire, about 210 operate with a select board. We're one of the unique ones. There are 13 cities and 8 town councils in the state. Town council serves as a legislative body, and the town manager serves as the CEO of the town. Only thing that the town council does not serve as a legislative body for is raising appropriations. For that, we have the SB2 official ballot referendum. Voters meet and debate and amend the budget and warrant articles at the first session, called the deliberative session, and final approval happens secret ballot on election day, which is the second Tuesday in March. And as I said, we just went over the budget submission process. I always say this, when it comes to the town side of government, we're much closer to Portsmouth and Dover in our form of government than we are to Exeter and Hampton. Exeter and Hampton still have selectmen and of that form of government where we are a council manager form of government. One of the big things is we do not have petitioned warrant articles. So it's basically what's on the ballot are bonds and budget. Now, Budget Committee does have another side, and that's the Newmarket School District. State law assigns the Budget Committee dual duty as a school district's Budget Committee, given that the district lies wholly within Newmarket. Following the same submission process of the council, school board, warrant articles, capital reserves, collective bargaining costs of special education, trust deposits, all require Budget Committee's recommendation. Authority over all appropriated funds remains with the school board and superintendent. And the other would be the capital improvement program. The Budget Committee appoints one member to serve on the town CIP committee. The CIP committee reviews anticipated major capital needs, prepares a multi-year schedule for large expenditures, recommends contributions to capital reserve funds. Example of capital items are vehicles, equipment purchases, infrastructure, building restorations, and upgrades. So large one-time projects instead of daily operations. So who serves on the Budget Committee? There are 9 at-large members, big asterisk, because on July 1st, that goes down to 7. What happens is at the next election, there will be only 1 individual up for election of the 3 who are up for re-election next year. The following year, 2 will be up for 2 years and 1 will be up for 3 years. That will get us onto a schedule of 2-2-3 for elections of Budget Committee members. This is coming from the clerk's office and the legal counsel. So we have to reset the numbers. There's also 1 town council rep and 1 school board rep. As I mentioned earlier, they cannot vote on chair or vice chair. Only the at-large members can. So what are the 4 core duties? 1, as I keep mentioning, prepare the budget, review the proposed budget, make adjustments as the committee sees fit, and produce the official recommended budget filed with the DRA. While I say that, we're not having the Budget Committee actually, unless the Budget Committee wants to, but we're here to help, then we will file all of the necessary forms with the Department of Revenue Administration. I know there were some questions in the past recently about who presents the budget at deliberative session. I have always done it on behalf of the Budget Committee because it's easier for me to answer the numbers than asking Budget Committee members to try to dig down into some of those items. The second is to confer with the town officials, meet with department heads, myself, finance director, and we're required by law to provide you requested information. So anything you want as a committee, you can request of us and we'll provide that. There are some caveats. We're not going to give personnel files. We're not going to give legal files. Anything that, non-public does not get turned over, but anything due to the operations we will give to you. You have to hold a public hearing. You have to hold at least 1 public hearing disclosing all the proposed appropriations before town meeting. No new spending purpose may be added without additional hearing. So when you get down to it, once you have the public hearing, if you want to add more money, we have to go through the process again of having another public hearing. And as I said, you have to deliver the final budget documents. So at least 20 days before town meeting, deliver the recommended budget and warrant article recommendations to the town council and town clerk. So warrant article recommendations is for every special warrant article with an appropriation, you must formally recommend or not recommend passage. Recommendations are printed alongside the town councils on the official warrant and ballot. You cannot amend special warrant articles. You can only recommend or not recommend. So Any contribution to capital reserve funds, anything other than the budget, you cannot change the figures. You can only recommend or not recommend. That comes from the governing body. And then throughout the year, you have the right to review expenditures, but you do not have the right to review expenditures to control spending on the current budget. That is out of your hands as soon as you propose it to the voters, and that falls back into the governing body's hands. What you're doing the review for is, okay, what do we need for next year's budget? So, for example, the budget committee cannot give orders to the school district and say, we want you to increase the hot lunch program by 50%. Budget's already set. Budget committee's done its job. Or we want the town council, the town to cut paving by 25%. Can't do that. Only the council and the school board can tell us those items. So what you can't do, besides what I just said, you can't direct the day-to-day work of the town employees. So much like the council can't, you can't go up to the public works director and said, why is my road not getting paved? If that's one of the very few things you can actually be thrown out of office for. Individual members have no independent authority. Official action requires a quorum of a properly noticed meeting. So if all of a sudden I have member, use Chris Blackstone, because I know she's got thick skin, says, I want to report on the last 5 years of all expenditures from the recreation department. I say, I'm sorry, but the budget committee has not voted to request that from us. The budget committee must act as one to do that. You cannot assign yourself duties beyond those listed in Chapter 32. Basically what I've said is that you cannot become like an audit committee or an appropriations committee. All it is to review the budget as well as review expenditures throughout the year. As I said, you cannot control how the town spends already appropriated funds. That relies with the council. And as I said, if the committee fails to deliver a budget, the council's proposed budget becomes to the voters. So if you don't make it by the deadlines, the council's goes to the ballot. So working with town staff, me, primary is the budget process contact. I'm the one who will be coming to propose the budget from the town council, and I'll submit it on behalf of the council on its behalf. The finance director is the one for the financial data. While I know a lot of it, I'm the one who will look at him and get the actual numbers from him. Also revenue projections and process logistics throughout the budget cycle. And department heads are available to answer questions about department costs, services, and operational needs upon committee requests. Usually we try to go through that with the initial presentation and explain exactly what they need, and we go from there. One thing also, and I forgot to send out the invite, is for the new members, if you would like to take a tour and meet the departments to get an idea, we can set those up as well, if that's interested, to go see all the departments, how they operate, and we'll set those up. And that's it. Any questions of me on the budget committee, role of the budget committee? Oops.
Could you go over again the 9 people turning to 7 because year one this happens?
Okay.
I can't even repeat it. You know what I mean?
Yes, let me repeat it.
Thank you, Steve.
I'll get the our attorney's email from this afternoon.
And meanwhile, you have to feel like $1 million because the New Hampshire Magazine article is...
It came out, it was very great. If anybody didn't see that, New Hampshire Magazine did a profile on Newmarket, and it was very favorable.
It was content rich.
Yeah.
Every paragraph.
The photographer was here for, I think, a day or two.
Nice.
And did a lot of photos. So, it was good. I even smiled a little. Okay. So the way the election's going to happen is this. We want to get to a 3-2-2 format. So member 7, we're going to start with the shortest term. Term will end in 2027. And then members 3, 4, and 5, 4, 5, 6 will have, 1 will have a 2-year term, and 3 will have a 3-year term. And then the next year, it will have, the rest will have that, so everyone's going to be on a 3-2-2 election cycle. We didn't want to have a 3-3-1, just because you want it somewhat balanced. So 223 was the most balance you could get.
And what was the initial kernel of idea of going from 9 to the 7?
I was not on the charter commission, so I am not sure.
I
I know there was a
find
former charter commissioner on the committee.
Yep, I
so-
can find that answer.
I didn't know it was because of the government.
No.
Chart.
Yes. My understanding would be, and please correct me if I'm wrong, they were hoping by having a smaller committee, it would have more ownership to the work being done, and hopefully get more people involved, because it's been even people to run for it. Okay. Any other questions?
Do you mind if I just add?
Yeah.
I'm Todd Allen, Superintendent of Schools. I did want just to clarify a couple of things. The Budget Committee process for the school district and the town are identical in terms of how they function. Obviously, as Steve explained, Town Council is the governing body that he works with for the school district. It is the school board. One of the things that's important to keep in mind, though, is that the school district is its own separate political entity. That's why there are two separate deliberative sessions, two separate processes. So when Steve is talking about meeting with department heads and so forth, the school district effectively is not a department of the town. However, any informational needs you have would come through me or Bryant Lee, the school business administrator. But again, process works almost identical. Just keep in mind that the school district is its own separate political entity.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that overview. Any questions, Steve, Todd? Role of the committee and function? In that case, Steve, you're ready. I think we're good. to
Okay.
Town update.
I do have the quarterly update for the town side. We're doing nothing out of the ordinary, quite well. Revenue, we are at $41,735,838, which we've actually collected 94.4% of the annual budget. Remember, most of our budget is through, when I say that money is through taxation. So we already collected the last year's July and this year's fall tax bill, so there's a lot of it. We're not seeing anything out of the ordinary. Building permits are back up, and motor vehicle, usually I look at two, motor vehicle permits and building permits, because those are our other two big ones. But those also show us the softening of the economy, because when the economy goes soft, people don't buy new cars and they stop building things on their home. We also see renovations versus new homes. But those we're not seeing any issues at this point in time. Again, this was done at the end of March. In between, there was a military actions, and we are seeing some, I'm going to be reporting to the council this week, our concerns on inflation in the next fiscal year budget, just on oil alone. We could see a 35% increase there. As for expenditures, we stand at $13.6 million, or 72.8% of the 18.9% budget. So we're slightly ahead of the 75% elapsed time. And the major areas that we are looking at for expenditures, fire and rescue part-time salaries, we have expended $411,000 versus the $350,000 for the annual budget. This has been over budget since February, and what we're doing is, a couple years ago we started our per diem program. We only have 2 full-time firefighters. So what we do instead is we hire firefighters on a per diem basis. Usually they're full-time firefighters in other communities, where after their 24-hour shift there, they come work for us on a per diem basis to provide us station coverage. It's been working quite well by having 24/7 coverage. But we just overexpended the call line, because that's where we hit. We will have an under expenditure in the full-time line, because there was some vacancies there to offset that. So any offsets are going to be there. We have been increasing the per diem amount, and right now we're going through a study of the fire department to figure out what our best options are in the future. Public Works overtime is up $108,000 versus the $80,000 budget. It's just because of the winter storm we had in January, February, March. We pray for snow versus ice and rain. Ice and rain are long time projects and they're out there all night, versus snow. We can get out there and clean it and get it done quickly. And we had a lot of those ice and rain situations that we had to get out there all the time. Our salt budget also is over at this time. Other than that, nothing huge on expenditures. And so yeah, year over year, our total revenue, as I said, we're up $4 million over last year. Our expenditures are, well, we're up over $565,000 over last year. We're not seeing anything out of the ordinary in that situation. So, any questions on our operating budget? Go ahead.
Is the analysis of the fire department not only the per diem situation, the salaries, but the whole facility?
Everything.
It's the
Yep.
whole-
All kit and boom. We've been doing it piecemeal for a few years. A few years ago, we did a complete organizational study, and then we did when we had a retirement in the planning department and building and building at the same time. We did a study there, and we're just rolling it now, and we're gonna do one of the fire department due to just the volumes.
They just have a seat. They put a name tag there. They just have a seat. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'll call him Tony.
So just a quick question about the gas and oil prices. So obviously, everything that happened or has happened nationally, internationally, was after we passed our budget. So what measures are you taking to mitigate the increase? I'm assuming that you're feeling the increases already, and even with paving and, like everything.
We are, and we're doing the basic. We're cutting back. So we won't be able to pave as many roads as we did because the oil prices coming in. Luckily, we were able to enter into an agreement with Bell and Flynn right during that point in time, so we weren't hit as hard. Our oil prices our energy prices have already been set, but we go back out in September, which is also hurricane time. So, yeah, could be a double whammy there. Gasoline, we still have to send fire trucks and police cruises out. So if it gets to that point, we'll have to make reductions in other parts of the budget.
Other questions for Steve on the town budget? Thank you, Steve,
Thanks.
so much, and I'll just make note for the record. We've been joined by Al Zink, Alfred Medioli.
Apologies for being late.
We'll have to put a motion. Good night, everybody. Good night. Appreciate that. All right,
For the finance manager of our district is our business administrator, Bryant Lee. He is the one that's prepared this this third quarter financial report, so I'll invite Bryant up to present the report. I do just want to say a couple of things. The finance of the school district is different than the finance of the town. Probably the biggest thing that we struggle with is we have a lot fewer revenue levers to pull to influence things. You'll often hear people say things like, well, 72% of the local tax rate is the school district, and that is absolutely true. That is a true statement, but we do not have the same range of options that the town does in managing. So there are a few things that Bryant will go over with you tonight that are tools that we use to manage our finance, things like retained fund balances and so forth, trust funds. He's going to review that with you, so you'll get that sense. So anyway, Bryant, come on up and share the report.
Thank you, Todd. I'm the trader. I've been with the district about a year now. So I'll go over the quarter three financials. You should have the report in front of you, hopefully. So there's a lot of numbers in the report, and I'm not going to go through every little detail, but I think it would help. Now that we're, more than 3/4 fiscal year, our financial projections for where we look to be at the end of the year, we will continue to refine those numbers as we get closer and closer. Precise. So, I'll talk about both sides of the ledger in terms of expenditures and revenues. Our budget for fiscal year 26 was about $28 million. So starting with the expenditures, definitely the biggest factor driving any so this began right at the beginning of the year, where we had to do a last-minute switch for the insurance provider that we had. We thought we were going to go with New Hampshire Interlocal Trust. They unexpectedly left the market at the last minute very quickly. But that switch alone increased the cost of health insurance by $152,000. And then about a quarter of the way through the year, we heard from School Care that they were charging all their members a mid-year assessment, which was a surprise to everyone. Our portion of that bill was $418,000, which was not budgeted for. So those things together, put us in the hole as far as health insurance costs, about $570,000 right off the bat. So really, any discussion about finances, that's sort of the starting point. Fortunately, though, we had a few things that went in our favor that we couldn't have predicted. So if you look at page 2 and 3 of the report, which is the expenditure tables, we do have some cost savings in the salaries and benefits line. This is partly because we were able to shift 4 full-time equivalent positions to what is called the Safe and Supportive Schools Grant, or the SAS grant, for half the year. And from that, we were able to save $163,000 in the general fund. We also have some savings from staff vacancies that we weren't able to fill throughout much of the year. So there was 1 social worker, 1 psychologist, 4 para, and 1 tutor positions that largely went vacant through the year. We have filled the social worker position at this point, and she began work in Q4, and we've also filled a para position. But because we didn't have to pay for those salary expenses, those are some cost savings. Part of that, of course, will be offset by the additional health insurance costs that weren't budgeted for. On the operational side, we had approximately 240,000 of the unfilled positions, mostly for paras and other special education positions. We had to contract those positions out. So though 240,000 of the savings in the salaries line actually is offset by that amount in the professional services line. So in that budget line, you'll see the largest negative variance in terms of expenditure at $220,000. Positively affecting our budget were out-of-district tuition expenses, which have come in much lower than we had budgeted for. So we are going to get about $90,000 in savings from Seacoast School of Technology enrollment, and about $385,000 in savings from special education tuition. We are anticipating potentially a adjustment to the special ed tuition line in this quarter, but even with that, we can expect substantial tuition savings this year. Other budget categories with some surplus are professional development and repairs and maintenance, but we expect to spend down most of that by the end of this year, though we do expect to see some savings in those lines. So summing up expenditures, We expect to see about a $1.1 million budget surplus by the end of the year. I'm sorry. At the end of Q3, we had a 1.1 million budget surplus. And factoring in anticipated expenditures for the rest of the year, a still relatively conservative estimate of our surplus at the end of the year will be about $850,000. So I'll pause there if there's any questions on the expenditure side.
I don't know if it's the right time to ask about it, but I think I've been seeing in the news, there have been some cases challenging, I think, that school care assessment raised implications for the payment that we made and what we were thinking on that.
Together, the assessment, if I remember correctly, was around $30 million. They've collected, or they will collect by the end of this fiscal year, 90% of that. The only, there was two districts, Portsmouth and Dover. Portsmouth has said that they're going to pay by the deadline. So it's really just Dover. And do you remember how much their assessment was?
Yeah, the Dover their assessment was $1.7 million. And what's been in the news is that they have engaged in some litigation to challenge the authority of school care to be able to assess additional costs. The decision that has been made so far was simply an injunction because school care was telling Dover if they didn't make arrangements to pay by May 1st, they would stop paying benefits for the remaining 2 months of the year. So the court decision was about not allowing school care to stop paying claims in the final 2 months of the year. Nothing has been decided with regards to their responsibility to pay the supplement. I would tell you, if the courts do decide to not make Dover pay the assessment, you are basically going to see pooled health insurance go away, because the gist of pooled health insurance is the savings is in the group. And if the group doesn't collectively take the responsibility for the cost, the pool doesn't exist. So if everybody, Newmarket included, suddenly says, okay, we want our money back, and that happens, school care will cease to exist and will be in the private market searching for a health insurance plan, which, by the way, Dover is currently doing. And the dominoes are beginning to fall that the quality of the coverage that they're going to have post school care is questionably equivalent. So anyway, that's basically the situation as we see it now.
When school came forward with increased cost, how did they explain it? Was insurance is either experience, admin costs, or go to
Yeah, basically there was consecutive years of much higher than predicted medical claims. So through that factor, it depleted their reserves. So they made this mid-year assessment basically to replenish their reserves. So that's mostly just bad actuarial work by them. And I would say it's probably a little bit of a knock-on effect from COVID, where a lot of people put off receiving medical care, and then all of a sudden there's a surge of demand for medical care, which drove the claims. From what we've heard this year is that the medical claims level has returned back to a normal level. So by collecting this assessment, they've basically gotten their reserves back to where it was before. So that's kind of the current situation and the rationale for why they needed to do this assessment.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very limited administrative costs, actually. And actually, school care does regular meetings with their shareholders. And certainly right about the time that the assessment was coming down, they had a meeting in which they reviewed the claims history. And one of the things that had happened is, and it actually happened across the industry for insurance, coming out of the pandemic, a lot of people, rightfully so, say, I need to go back to the doctor now, and they started getting a lot more treatment and care than they had postponed during the pandemic. And so during 23, 24, and 24, 25, there was a dramatic uptick in people who had medical claims that exceeded $1 million per individual. So when you're talking about a pool like school care, which has somewhere around 9,000 people covered, if you have, I think at the time last year, they were talking like 300 individuals had what they called exceedingly high claims that came very suddenly, and the way they pay those is through their reserves if they haven't already calculated into the rates. And so what happened was they had to pay out all those claims, and suddenly the reserves, it disappeared. Most recently, I was at a meeting with them last week, and their, as Brian said, their reserve fund is far healthier this year than it was last year. Go figure, they did collect $30 million, so it kind of helped. But that's probably the reason. But they're clearly in a lot better place where they are not anticipating another assessment coming down the pike immediately.
So that pattern was brought out because during the COVID years, the expenditures were much lower.
I think what was happening is more people were not going to the doctor during, I mean, other than people were tending to not follow up on regular care.
I know that's just the general narrative, but is that something that you see in the numbers?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah, they actually, I could certainly share it with you. They put together a sort of a chart that showed claims history, and what had happened in 23, 24, and 24, 25 was a dramatic increase in people, cancer treatment, stuff like that is just very expensive treatments, and there's a lot more people who were pursuing that in the pool. And again, when you have a relatively small pool of 9,000 people, 90 entities, the impact can be had pretty quickly on your reserve fund when it's 90 or 100 people suddenly increase the cost.
I have two. First, professional development. So there's a sum of money, and people haven't taken advantage of the PD evidently, and maybe between now and July 1st they're going to. But is there some reason you can pinpoint about why that PD money is still available?
Yeah, so we budget a certain amount based on our forecast for the requests to get reimbursements for courses or other PD work. And we tend to put in a bit of a buffer. But I think in future years we're going to get more and more accurate in terms of the budget, because we have some mechanisms in place where people have to request the funds well in advance now in order to get them. And we're making less and less sort of exceptions for that rule now that they know how it's supposed to work.
So if a person knew they were going to be in a master's program or a doctorate program, they just figure out their schedule further in advance to get that
almost a year in advance at this point. But that was a new thing, so we gave some leeway in the past couple of years, but we're going to be more strict about it going forward.
Thanks. And my second one is about the professional services. You've used contracted services. I'm curious, how does Newmarket stack up against other towns having to or deciding to use contracted services instead of some employees in their district themselves?
I know I can't only speak for Newmarket, but we only do it based on the needs of the district. If we can't fill it, then we're sort of forced to contract it out. I don't know.
Yeah, generally, a lot of the contracted services we're talking about are meeting special education needs, and when you can't hire the staff locally, you need to provide it. So you go with a contracted service. A lot of behavioral specialists. We've had to do some subcontract with our speech language at one level because we haven't been able to hire our own person. So that's largely what happens in that category.
I have a
Thank you.
question. Is there any, do you think that there is any,
do you think is any of that caused by the vacancies in the positions?
you said there were 4 or 5 vacant positions this year. would that have any effect, or is that negligible?
I'm sure it has a very fractional, we have 135 professional staff members, something like that?
Yeah, around
Like
that.
135.
So the effect on the vacancies would be
So it'd
negligible?
relatively small.
on the PD.
I think what Bryant was talking about is in our new contract, there's language in there that we're trying to encourage staff to do professional growth and training, but what we're also trying to do is to ask them to commit to what they want to do when we develop the budget. So we budget for what they want, and then we're not running a higher. What we've done in the past is we just use some factorial of, okay, if everybody maxed out their PD money, this is how much we would do. And what we find is we get to the end of the year and there tends to be a lot there. We anticipate that being smaller in years to come.
Thank you.
I was going to put on that. So is there like a percentage target that would, we have employees, we talk about contracts, like do we see other districts have accounts where it's like 5% FTEs, 5% contracts, we have flexibility. I'm just wondering, I don't know if there's 4, 5, 7 vacancies that we have open, right? Like, we didn't fill those because we couldn't find folks to fill them, or was it budgetary? It's like if we had filled them.
No, it was generally it's because we couldn't find people to fill them in general, and virtually all of those positions are in the special education world, and so we have had an ongoing struggle to hire paraprofessionals. We have a continuous ad all the time, and that is absolutely across the industry. Everybody's having struggles doing that, and then when you get into some of the particularly the high skill level type positions like speech language, occupational therapists, psychologists, things like that, when you lose somebody good, replacing them is very challenging. And so we've had periods of time we've had to fill the gap through contracted services.
And do we find the cost offset, right? Because contracted services might have a higher run rate for a short period of time, but we're also not paying for health insurance and things like that. Like, are we seeing that kind of balance out when we make those decisions?
Generally speaking, the contracted services will be more expensive than if we hired directly and we paid all the benefits. So is it fair to say we would prefer to?
Well, I think we would absolutely prefer to have our own people, just because it also gives us flexibility in the scheduling of the services. When you get into contracted services, we got a person on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Well, that's all well and good, but if the kids need help on Tuesdays and Thursdays, you don't have that person available. So it's better for us to have our own people.
And particularly when it's in the special education space, it's better for kids that have the continuity.
And quite a bit of that statutory, I'm sure, right? You will have such and such per such and such kid. Right? It's not like you guys can have any wiggle room, right? That's dictated to you by the state.
Correct. There are, absolutely. If a service is in an IEP, it has to be provided, and we have to find a way to provide it.
I think you were first.
Well, this is a different subject, so I don't know if that's...
Yeah, just a follow-up question to yours. What's, for context, special education in Newmarket, as a relatively new resident, how does Newmarket stack up just in terms of its special education needs or population against other districts on a pro rata basis? Do you have any sense of that?
Yeah, we actually, Erica McNeil, our student services director, actually did a presentation on that development. In special education services almost near identically state and national trends. We have 21% identified students in our district, and that's pretty much everybody in that area.
There's a huge spectrum of
Yeah.
what is
Right.
identification.
Yes, they have they're identified for specialized instruction.
So my question is about that. Their tuition rate, probably not. SST, what's the situation?
One of the things you'll notice if you look at Newmarket enrollments, it's actually very crazy making when you try to predict. Every other year we have like I'll give you an example. This year's kindergarten, there are 90 kids in it. That's a big number. They're going to first grade. The kindergarten that we're about to see come in has 64 kids in it. And if you follow the pattern, we have up, down. This is what happens continuously. So what did happen, we did have a down year of SST, a smaller number. So the savings is largely fewer kids went to SST. And actually, believe it or not, SST did lower their tuition. And they were able to get a little more funding, to grant funding. And our per pupil tuition cost, when we send a kid to SST, it's usually somewhere around $4,300, but there was only like $4,150 for this past year. So there was a little bit of savings there as well.
On that same question, am I correct, though, that SST participation is continuing to grow, not in terms of numbers of students, but in the use of SST?
You mean specific in relation to Newmarket kids?
Yeah.
I would say at any given time, roughly 25% of Newmarket kids are engaged in a program at SST.
That's what,
typically, most of the programs are junior, senior programs. So first year kids, we usually have somewhere around 40 or so kids in the first year program. Second year program is a little more competitive to stay in the program, and it's usually about half that. So I don't think the numbers are going up. I think they're pretty stable. It's been that way since I've been here. I will tell you, SST has launched a new program that I think is going to attract kids. It's an electrical trades program,
Right.
which is kind of exciting.
I'm sorry.
no, that's fine.
I had one question about the SASS grant. Is that going to be something that we're going to continue to receive, or is that is there a one and done?
One of the things that has been very challenging to do is to predict federal funding sources. When we were given the grant initially, it was supposed to be a 5-year commitment. It hasn't turned out that way. But the positive side is they gave us more money in year 1 than they said they were going to, but they wouldn't promise that they were going to give it to us in year 2. They've now told us we're getting year 2, but they haven't told us we're getting years 3, 4, and 5 yet. And it's a little hard to project. I hope, certainly the people we're working with through the grants management are very supportive of it, and they certainly hope that we continue to get the grant throughout the life of it.
Did they commit to the same number for year 2 as for year 1? Do you know?
Do you remember?
I don't think we have the figure yet.
Yeah, year 1 they gave us about $250,000, and with very specific parameters on how we had to spend the money. And because of the craziness at the federal level, they didn't tell us how much we had until August. And then they said you have to spend it by December 31st, which is hard to do. As much as I love money, it was challenging to spend $250,000 in 4 months in the way that they were limiting us to do. That's why we targeted mental health positions that we already had. After January, they then said, well, we're going to not take away the remaining balance you didn't spend. We're going to give that back to you. So we're in the process of using that. And they promised us another tranche of money, but they haven't given it to us yet. So that's the world we live in. And we hope that it comes through in a way that's helpful.
Thank you so much.
Okay. The next item is food service. There's nothing significant in terms of variance of note, so you can take a look at the numbers on page 4 for yourselves, I think. So I'll skip to revenues, which we have more good news on the revenue side. So we have anticipated $82,000 higher local revenue than we budgeted for. This is from tuition from other school districts, out-of-district folks coming here. Also earnings on investments, just like the interest rate is higher, has been a higher interest rate environment, and then a few other local revenue sources. We did get 30% higher special education aid this year than what was budgeted, so that's an extra $90,000. Unfortunately, we got $31,000 less in adequacy aid than we were expecting. And if Medicaid sort of keeps on its current trajectory, we probably get slightly lower in Medicaid reimbursements than we expected. We may also get 19,000 in E-rate reimbursements, which is basically a program where you buy IT equipment and you get a rebate. So netting all that together, a conservative estimate of our revenue surplus by the end of the year is $135,000. Okay, so now I'm going to get into some of our other sort of pools of money. First, I'll talk about the impact fees. Does everyone know what the impact fees are, or where they come from? Yeah, so I can't claim to fully understand it myself, but my understanding is that if there's developments in towns, the developers have to pay a tax basically to do that development, and they're pooled to the town, and then they're allocated on different entities within the town, and the school gets a proportion of that for expanding the school, basically. Does that sound about right? Okay.
It has to be an impact caused by development.
Okay, so the school board has approved 2 uses of impact fees total this year, totaling $56,000. The first one was to pay for upgrades to expand electrical capacity in classrooms at the senior high school. And the second is to do a feasibility study for a potential athletics field in the property across from the high school. So overall, after taking away those 2 expenses, the school district has $234,000 in total impact fees available, none of which will expire before 2028 because they do have an expiration date where you have to use it or lose it.
I'm sorry, it says that number was what?
234,000.
On page 7.
Oh, well, I'm sorry.
Okay, and then lastly, the capital reserve and trust funds. So these are funds that are sort of reserves or contingencies. The aggregate balance was $1.8 million. This was down from a beginning balance of $2 million. That's the net result of $265,000 transferred in from voted for last year, combined with a transfer out of $526,000 for trust fund usage. Most of that went to repair. Preparing one additional transfer benefits trust. Which I'll talk a little bit. $1,000 from this year's unassigned fund balance. So it's collecting, they're being invested basically income to date per month, which is equivalent of about $59,000. In quarter 3, that return or the yield went up to 7.9%, which was significantly higher than quarter 2, which was only 1%. So I'm not sure exactly what that's telling us, other than, you know, we could potentially expect a lot of volatility, and we don't really know what's going to happen with interest rates. Okay, so the last thing I'll talk about is where we'll end up with the fund balance. So this is on page 9. I created a table that shows the allowable range for the retained fund balance, which is basically a mechanism, another sort of contingency mechanism, where if we have a fund balance at the end of the year we can move that forward to next year to use in extreme circumstances, and I believe it needs to be voted by the town to use those funds. But last year, we put 3.75% of last year's assessment, which was the equivalent of about $856,000 into the retained fund balance. If we put the equivalent 3.75%, that would be roughly $1 million this year. So I've taken a shot at forecasting what our unassigned fund balance would be at the end of the year. One thing we were very fortunate of this year is that the school board had voted to close another fund, a capital fund, which was basically the fund, we had a bond to refurbish the schools, and there was a pot of money that was just left over in that, and the school board voted to apply that, which was about $215,000 to pay off this year's, to contribute towards the debt payment this year. So that's basically another $215,000 that we had available this year. If the school board decides to transfer the $134,000 from the Insurance and Benefits Trust, add on top of that last year's retained fund balance, which was $857,000. What I said in terms of forecasted revenue surplus, $135,000, plus the forecasted budget surplus, $850,000. If we assume the 3.75 going into next year's retained fund balance, take out $1 million, and then $150,000 that was voted for the warrant article to put $150,000 back into the Insurance and Benefits Trust, we're looking at a year-end fund balance of just over $1 million. So in summary, the overall financial picture is that, given where we started with the health insurance unexpected expenses, we're in pretty good shape. And this will give the school board some flexibility to, they have some levers at their disposal. They can put more or less into the retained fund balance. They can use trust fund transfers or not. So I think we'll present a few different options to them before the end of the year to see, how much can go back to the town. Yep.
If the fund balance were transferred to reduce taxes, what would the impact be on the tax rate?
I would have to do that calculation, and it depends on what the tax rate is set at, and we don't know that for sure until almost the end of the year.
Right.
But
it should be, we should be able to figure.
Yeah. So
is it 50 cents on the,
When we were doing calculations at the warrant time, it was about 6 cents per $100,000.
Right, okay, so.
So $1 million would be about 60 cents on the 1,000.
Not huge.
Right.
Am I remembering correctly that you guys did the in-house for the electrical upgrades?
No, we contracted.
Yeah, that's great.
We got a really good deal on it.
Yeah, that's great. I love to see it.
Yeah.
Just a quick question, apologies if I missed it here. With, if that 134 from the Insurance and Benefits Trust is used to pay down the school care assessment, the plan for that trust, sorry again if I missed it, to close that out or to start refunding that kind of year over year and reaccrue that trust? Yeah,
so we already know there's $150,000 going back into that fund, which was voted on in March and approved. So if we don't transfer that, then it'll be, $280,000 in there for next year, which isn't a bad idea given sort of the uncertainty with health insurance costs recently.
And just to do a quick history lesson of kind of how we got here. When we were first hit with the assessment, what we had discussed with the board was the potential for depleting the health benefits fund, and then at the time that the retained fund balance was being determined, that the board might make a different decision on how much to keep in the retained fund balance to offset the remaining balance.
What we've found, though, is we're in a much healthier place now than we thought we were going to be. So the board really needs to wrestle with these questions, and there are things that they're going to have to wrestle with, in terms of how much we want to make sure to return to offset taxes. Are there things that we were anticipating taking from trust funds that we might do to not have to take from trust funds, because in the end it's all of our money? And also, how much of the health assessment do we pay out of that remaining $1 million? So all of those things have to be decided, and that's a board discussion and decision.
More just curiosity.
Yeah.
So that impact we called out, looks like there was some to do feasibility for an building sheet. Was that information from that, like the expected share, was that something?
No, we're pretty early stages still. We've selected a firm to do the study, and we had our initial meeting about 3 weeks ago. We have our follow-on meeting this week, but it's we don't expect to have the report until around September this year.
And it is just a conceptual design to give us an idea of approximate cost, because we've had these sort of general conversations like, yeah, wouldn't it be great too? But we've never actually said, like, what would it really cost? So the idea is to get that, and then we'll engage in earnest in the conversation about, okay, how does this fit into capital planning?
Frank, Todd, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for having us.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Have a great evening.
So the last item to review is just the draft schedule, kind of the remainder of the year here. I will note it was caught, fortunately, by some other members in the committee here that the agenda has a typo. It says the next meeting is July 26th. It's actually July 27th, and it's correct on the
All right,
draft
great.
schedule. So apologies for that. That we had some of us here on Sunday. I don't imagine many of you want. So this year we're proposing a bit of a different schedule than in years prior. It used to be a monthly meeting, and it would kind of alternate between town and school. And this year we're taking more quarterly approach, and combining the two meetings. And we think that's going to be a little bit maybe more efficient use of the folks' time, and we can find the updates. That said, if there's a topic that we're interested in, Steve and Todd have definitely indicated that we can let them know, hey, we'd like to have a conversation about X, Y, Z, and we can get that on the books and either tack it on to an existing meeting that's scheduled, or try to schedule a special session. The other thing that I'll note is the dates towards the end of the year. You'll notice that they're kind of weighted towards November, December, January. Those can't actually be finalized until a bit later in the year. The town has to receive deadlines from the state first, so that we know when we have to get a budget back to them. So as soon as we get those dates from the state, we'll finalize those dates. These are kind of ballpark based on what we did last year. Backups for snow, because those dates, it's really important. That's where we're reviewing the budget, we're holding the public hearing, all of the really kind of heavy lifting being done. So I also realize though people are taking holidays around that time and everything, so we'll just try and get that set in stone as quickly as we can in that state. So are there any questions? I know first meeting for a lot of folks. Thanks everybody for joining the budget committee and having to see everybody here. Any questions? Yeah.
I just have a question about the schedule. So, I guess I always thought it was a little heavier around the fall and early winter. So I'm surprised that there are only a few meetings listed. Do you anticipate more?
I don't. So when I put this together, it was essentially based on what we did last year, and ran it by Todd and Steve, and so it looked good to them. And provided there's no, like we don't have to reject anything, we have to come back. If let's just say everything goes, as expected, I think this is pretty close to what we would expect.
Yeah, But I don't know if you folks discussed the changes in the charter and how that affects this committee. The Charter Commission spent a lot of time on the Budget Committee, its role, its reporting, things that were perhaps not done in the past as they should be. I'm not prepared tonight to talk about it. Tony and I will both on it, but I think our next meeting, perhaps we can go over that with you, particularly the role of the Budget Committee, which has changed this year and is next, this committee will be presenting the budget, not the town administrator.
I'm sorry, can you repeat what's different this year?
Saying this budget committee will be presenting to the town its budget, not the town administrator. It's a very different role.
Yeah, so Steve did give a presentation.
Okay.
I think that this is actually maybe a little bit different, so it might warrant maybe a little more conversation, because Steve, at least by my interpretation, presented quite clearly that while it is the budget committee's budget, we are able to delegate the presentation if we would like, and that's kind of a decision I think that we would kind of make as a committee.
So I'd like to recommend that we have something, presentation's the only word I can think of, but that sounds quite formal. If we could have Tony and Al kind of be agenda items for July and give us.
I will read the charter, because again, I don't know how much time we spent on the budget committee, but it was a lot. We had 7 or 8 meetings, a lot, and I would dare to say a quarter of it was about the budget. It was about whose budget it is. It was about budget forecasting, which is a requirement that I think the budget committee is going to be pretty excited about. And I'm not prepared to talk about it.
Would we like for the 27th? We can all kind of take a look at the charter.
Read the chart, yeah.
And then if you and Tony would like to kind of talk us through, since we're the ones there, that could be one of the agenda items.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a procedural question from a new person. So if there are particular parts of the budget that you'd just like to investigate, I noticed, for example, that the enterprise funds, the water and sewer funds are self-financing, which is as it should be, because the water and sewer funds, only serve certain populations in the town. The solid waste fund is not. It requires a subsidy. It'd be interesting to know a little bit more, or to delve into that, particularly given the recycling costs. So the question is, what's the procedure for that? As opposed to sort of individual members, aren't supposed to go run off on their own.
I think, is that what Steve touched on, where he said that we have to request that information as a committee? We can't do it as an individual. So how do we? What's the procedure?
So I think that we could have a conversation here for any and information we'd like to obtain from Steve and department heads, or Todd for that matter.
And then is that something that you would submit
I
to
would
Steve?
facilitate that. Yeah.
Does it make sense to bring those requests to the next meeting? Does it make sense for, people have requests for us to bring to the next meeting?
So for example, if I wanted, I could research a couple of items and just sort of say, this is what I'm, then present it to the internal committee, and then we can decide as a group to go forward or not.
I think also it's interesting, you missed the part where Steve said that anybody's welcome to make appointments with going to get a tour of all the departments.
And meet the departments.
So if you met the departments, it makes it much easier to speak with or talk to or ask questions of once you've been there.
Yeah.
So I'd say, get a hold of Steve and say, yeah, I'm a new person, I'd like to take you up on the tour idea. I would highly recommend that.
I'm going to take the tour.
Well, that's not considered a pest or a favor. I think, first of all, from what I know of them, they're really proud of what they do. So it's a chance to really show what they do. And he would probably be able to say, he could expedite, if you did this at 11 and this at 11:40 and this at 12, he could figure out the grand tour for you. Yeah. And I think he would like thinking that somebody was really doing it after he offered it.
I know, I'm going to do, you said it was really good, right?
It's so cool.
Yeah, okay.
Learning about the department.
I know, I'm excited, yeah.
Well, actually, so if a bunch of us do it, we should probably coordinate.
I was going to say,
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
happy to coordinate if we want to, put some schedules together, and I can try and put together like a little.
Yeah, I would be interested in doing that, yeah.
Okay, I'll send a.
My schedule is fairly free, yours may not be, so.
I work from home, so my schedule is very, very flexible.
I don't work.
So you're really free then. So you're free.
You work very hard.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, for meeting with department head. Just as kind of something that could be helpful for you also, last year we had like a Google Calendar. I know that we have the town calendar, which is the official calendar. I think folks found that maybe difficult to subscribe to, difficult to have ping you. Would it be helpful as a tool? It's not the official calendar, but if we had like a Google Calendar you could subscribe to the dates and things like, oh, hey, we're going to go on this day. Is that something we'd like to do this year? Is that?
I'm more old school and just say send a group email to
Send a
tell you the
group
truth.
email?
Yeah.
Paper plane?
Yeah, paper planes, whatever. Yeah, I would find that just easier, just get an email.
I mean, anything that happens in the morning, like a quorum requires a decision. So keeping that conversation or those communications as visual as possible is also good.
Yeah, agreed.
So, no on the. Excellent. Okay.
So how many members? How many members of the board here are veterans? How many are new?
So from prior years, there's
Veteran?
Which one?
Well, but there's also, people do it and then you go off and then you come back on. There's also, since I joined, so many things have changed anyway with some of the budgeting process. So in many ways, I don't know if I speak for you others, but it's kind of like everybody's new because the whole system is in a exciting upbeat change.
This is my first time, will be my first term serving in any capacity for the town of Newmarket.
Yeah, me too. I just moved here 2.5 years ago.
Well, thank you both.
Yeah.
And again, particularly with this new charter changes, it is, that was the emphasis of the charter commission, was to really put some work on the shoulders.
There were a lot
This
of
committee.
items up on this this last election cycle. There were a lot of.
There were.
I was shocked that it was like 11 pages. It was a lot. It was hefty.
Yeah.
So one thing that the Charter Commission did that could be helpful if you're interested is we had a representative from the New Hampshire Municipal Association come and give a presentation about and answer questions about the role of the budget committee. And it was, I think, for people who had the Charter Commission, everyone had served in some capacity in town government, right? And usually in multiple capacities, but still didn't quite understand or grasp the role of the budget committee, and so it was really helpful to have that information presented to us from completely, separate source.
Dispassionate.
Yes.
But
yeah,
that's more
yeah.
in terms of
Unbiased.
the
It was-
state rules that you have to
Well,
follow.
Yeah, exactly.
No, not the
Founded,
state, from
at
how
least
our
I
government
was, that the
works.
budget committee
Never mind. How our
budget
government.
goes to the community, not the town manager. We were shocked. I've been on the budget committee for 15 years. So it's worth reading, it's worth.
So I'm curious, as an so fiscal year, so what Steve presented, how much is that different from?
I wasn't.
Oh, no, I think that was all accurate information. I will say that the municipal association kind of gave us more.
Way more.
And talked more about the authority of the budget committee. And the budget committee really has a lot of authority that you can utilize or not. So I found it very helpful.
And the associated responsibility that they come to.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
It's a pretty tough book.
Yeah.
Pretty comprehensive.
So, and they're available.
I was going to say, I was
just
going to ask,
say,
is there
yeah.
something that's
Yeah.
readily available?
Yeah, I mean, that's what, we're members of the, as the town and the community of the municipal association, so that's one of their roles is to provide training. There's also conferences that happen or a conference that happens in November.
October.
20-something this year.
What's that?
You're talking about the New Hampshire Municipal Association Conference?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's October this year?
October.
Yeah, day, a long
Day and a short day.
And it's, you can get so much information. I went for years and I
Is it in
found
Concord, I
super
presume?
helpful.
Yeah.
It's usually in Manchester.
Yeah, it's in Manchester, that center of New Hampshire, that big hotel con. And Steve
And
is
the
a big.
town will cover the cost.
Mhm.
The town will cover, like, your registration.
That's what it,
Yeah.
The other
Not
thing-
your hotel, not your hotel or the bar tab.
Not the mini bar?
The other thing, by the way, I forgot to mention, the charter commission change was it reduced the number of budget committee members down to
7.
7 from,
So Steve did talk about that.
okay.
Yeah, and how that's going to happen. It's not this year, it's gonna happen next year. For the next election.
All good information then, and I suppose that if anybody's interested in going to that conference, you know, I'm sure we can figure that out. I assume it would be a matter of talking to Steve to find out kind of the next steps, and maybe we could even have somebody from the mix, if we take cases, so, okay. Any other questions, topics? Do you have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion made by Al Zink. Anybody second by?
She seconded.
I second.
Second by Lauren. All in favor say aye.
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 Thank you, nice to see you.